Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, a place where you can come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker and welcome to episode 38, Identifying Your Top Values. So last week we talked about beliefs, and the week before we talked about how beliefs and values work together and how important they are. This week it's all about drilling down to what your top values are. Okay, so this can raise anxiety for people because the list of values is limitless, right? It's huge, it's long. There's so many to choose from. For those of you who struggle with making decisions, stick with us here. It's a process. Don't let this deter you. You'll figure it out. And it's a really cool process, I think. I don't think it's one that we want to walk away from or avoid. So first I want to talk a little bit about what are values really. And there's a few things here that come up for me. Of course, there could be more things you would want to add to this list, and that's great. But I consider values as guiding principles that govern how we live. You know, for most of us, they often can be tied to what we feel are our morals and ethics, the right way to live kind of thing. However, not all of them. I mean, some of them, like creativity or adventure or fun, may not seem real moral on the surface, but they still matter. Joy. Joy's not a moral, perhaps, but it's a really cool value to have, and it matters. I think they are also often tied to what we believe, like I've been saying. If we believe we must be truthful, for example, then we probably hold honesty in high regard and doing the right thing. You'll see a connection among your values as you go. That's what's really cool. As you sort and sift and pick and choose and add on and delete, hopefully, at the end of this process, you'll have values that really work together. I mean, some might even be redundant, but they all line up. They all fit together pretty well. I think our values comprise our integrity, which I personally think is the core of self-confidence and self-esteem. It gives us a sense of purpose. And I love the old adage, you can't take my integrity away. I have to give it away piece by piece. That's a pretty powerful, profound thing to think about. I have to give it away. I have to go against my values. I have to go against who I think I really am to do what you want me to do it out of fear, out of desperation perhaps. I think values provide meaning for our life. In other words, if we value success, well, getting out of bed and making it happen gives us a reason to get out of bed. If we value compassion and kindness and giving, volunteering on a Saturday probably really energizes us. If we value security, saving money will matter. If we value love, we're probably going to focus more on our relationships than we are cleaning the house. Values help us prioritize as well. They help us figure out what matters more in this moment and why. I also think that they are what we are passionate about, what we fight about, like I said before. They're what we focus our life on, and they greatly influence our decision-making and how we behave. Also, of course, how we can get pretty upset when we're listening to the news or we see someone else's behavior that we don't like, or if we're really emotionally touched by something that's going on around us. If you sit there and think long enough about it, it's because it's touching on one or more of your deep values. Now, ideally, our adolescence and into our mid-20s is when we were supposed to use that time to pull away from our parents' values, from values that were instilled in us, so to speak, sort through them, sift through them, and define our own. Now, we may include maybe all of them, maybe some of them, maybe none at all. It depends on the situation. But we weren't not supposed to swallow those of others without thinking about it. But that can happen more than you realize. Finding our identity is what this is about. And it's huge. And it's something not talked about enough. And what we do know is that if we didn't do it then, we will find ourselves in some kind of midlife upheaval later. But more about that in another episode. So values are our identity. I also think we can't really be true to ourselves and not be true to our values and our beliefs. We can't go against ourselves and be happy. We can't go against ourselves and be proud of ourselves. We can't go against ourselves and not have anxiety around that. Or depression or self-loathing, fill in the blank. I think values guide our decisions and they make decisions easier to make. In a sense, not that all decisions are easy to make whatsoever, but they are pretty much our ethical reasoning, and they define how we view our relationships as well. And what I mean by relationships, I mean more broadly and more specifically. More broadly in terms of how we fit into the world, what our place is, and our specific close relationships, people we interact with. Okay, so you may have already done a lot of this values work in the past. And if so, I hope it's just a cool refresher and a chance to see if anything has changed or might be changing or on the verge of changing for you. I think our values are something that we want to revisit often, as well as our beliefs. As we change, we grow, we mature, we often become a lot more open-minded and flexible. Ironically, at the same time, a little more entrenched in what really is meaningful for us and what matters. What typically happens over time is we may value money less and relationship more. Living more, working less, things like that. I also think that our values may shift and change as we are in different developmental places in our life. When you're 22, your values might feel a little different than when you're 52. When you're 22, working might hold a really high value. Climbing the ladder really matters. Success may really matter to secure your place in the world. But at 52, you might be winding that down, and other things like creativity and enjoyment and relationships may matter more. I also want to say, if you're already panicking, don't. We don't talk about these enough. When I bring this up to people, they look at me like I have three heads, and that's okay. But we're going to talk about them today, so don't worry. And you know the rule of thumb now anyway. Look, if you've lost yourself along the way, you may feel out of touch with your values, or maybe you never even gave them a solid thought, and that's okay. That's why you're here. And if you did, this podcast is all about getting you back. All the episodes, if you look at them, you'll agree. Okay, one thing that might be helpful to do is to take a moment here, and I want you to think about times where you were really proud of yourself. It could just be one time, and that's okay. Where were you really proud of yourself? What was going on? What did you do? What did you not do, perhaps? Like, what did you refrain from doing? And you felt really good about yourself. Why was that? Why did you like your choice or choices? Sometimes being at a crossroads in our life can really cement this in our memory. A lot of times we did something really brave and we were scared as hell and we did it anyway. And we're like, yes, that feels so good. I stepped out there. I made it happen. I stood firm. I didn't cave. I stood in my truth. I took a risk. Now, I understand some of these instances you may have had some loss incurred as well. I've been there as well. Yes, sometimes it hurts to do the right thing, but it's always better in the end. We want alignment. We want our life to line up with what we believe and what we value. So think about those times when that happened. They could even be brief moments. Just remember the phrase, it showed and you glowed. Okay, conversely, what about the times where you felt awful? You felt maybe both guilt and shame over something you did or didn't do. What kind of do you let other people talk you into? What fear or fears drove you, perhaps? Because they often do. Fear gets in the way of doing the right thing a lot of times for a lot of people every day. What about the awful reality, let's say, of a good person who is suddenly homeless and desperate and needs to steal food or medicine? That's so sad. They have to go against their values of being honest and working hard. And they were like that all their life, but circumstances created a really awful situation for them. Maybe you've had some of those in your past. A lot of times when I talk to people, it's because, unfortunately, who they were married to, who they were dating, who they were hanging out with. They were manipulated, they were abused, they were scared, they were threatened, and they end up having to go against themselves. Maybe you went against yourself to go along, to people please, to avoid conflict, to avoid rejection. It's okay. I just want you to think about both times where it felt really, really good to stand in your truth, and the times, unfortunately, with compassion, you think back, unfortunately you had to go against your values, and it did not feel good at all. Okay, so I have provided in your newsletter an exercise for values. I provided a values list and a way to pare them down to your top 10. I realize you may not have that list in front of you to get the full benefit, but that's okay. Stick with us. I just want you to explore what comes up in your heart as you're listening, and you can always print that out later and make it happen. You can also go to the internet and get your own list of values. You can do whatever feels right for you. It's okay. Or get to it later. Okay, so I want to read through a bunch of values, knowing that this list can really be endless, right? I'm just picking and choosing a few here. I just want you to start the thoughtful process. I want you to notice, as I read through these, what resonates for you and why. And you may not even know your why. You may. Just notate it. It's not resonating for no reason. That you can be sure of. Please also interpret what they mean for you. The word truth can mean many things to many people. I want you to think about what hits your heart and why. If you're in a place to take some notes, that's fabulous. If not, you can always listen again. You can always hit the worksheets later in the download when you have time. Okay, so I'm going to read through some typical values. Again, not an exhaustive list. My hope is that you'll just listen and see what comes up for you and see where it takes you. So some of the standard ones that are out there are accountability, accomplishment, adventure, all for one and one for all, connectedness, community, right? Beauty. That could mean personal beauty or beauty in the environment, beauty in nature, beauty in art. Peace, commitment, community, honor, friendship, freedom, personal growth, faith, positive attitude, practicality, fun, hard work, relaxation, punctuality, reliability, responsibility, harmony, inner peace, creativity, integrity, self-reliance, equality, strength, service to others, wisdom, spirituality, risk-taking, truth, tolerance, and trust. Okay, so as you were listening, what came up for you? What were you thinking? What resonated? Which ones really said, ooh? Which ones spoke to you? Which ones did you already know? Oh yeah, that's mine. No doubt. Which ones piqued your interest that you kind of hadn't thought about before? And that is one of the reasons why I think that on the internet, the lists of values are so long and are so comprehensive because we want to grow from this. We want to expand our thinking. We want to think about things maybe we hadn't thought about in a long time. So it's really just about getting in touch. What experiences maybe popped up in your memory when you were listening, or maybe some new ahas that have been helping you form values lately? Okay, so here comes the most difficult part, right? Assuming you have read through your whole list of values and you've really given them some thought. The basic idea, as difficult as it can be, is paring it down to your top 10. Like choosing among many you may hold, but committing to the top 10 ones, like these are the most important ones out of the 50 that I chose. Now, of course, some of them are going to mirror others or mimic others or be grouped with others or combined. For example, if you value honesty, it's pretty close to truth. So if you have the worksheet, great. If not, just think about what your top 10 might be and why. What has life taught you? What has life forged within you for good or for bad? Or both? I want you to take time with this exercise. Sit with this for a while. This is not a quick hitter at all. It takes a while to really resonate with our values, with our why. Like, why do you value that? Give it some thought. Are you good with that? Does it really resonate for you? Why? Based on what you believe, based on what you've experienced, and now what you believe from that experience? How has life shaped you? Take your sweet time. Remember, values are governing our life. There's nothing more important. They really, really matter. We don't want to rush through this process. We want to marinate in it. We want to take a while. We want to keep going back to it. Keep thinking about it. Keep journaling about it. So when you're picking your top 10, I also want you to include those that you really, really wish you had going for you, but maybe you went a little sideways in recent years. Maybe you never valued it before. In fact, oftentimes these are the ones that really rubbed us the wrong way because other people had them and lived them out so perfectly in our eyes. It's okay. Or maybe it's a cool new one you never even thought about. Write it down and journal about. Why do you want that? This is so important. Here's the thing. I don't think it would be put on your heart if it wasn't supposed to be. And remember, typically, all that's in the way between you now and you living out that value is change. Just change, and you can change. You can always change. You are already, I think, growing into the value and changing it because you're craving it. It represents some important things for you, and if you sit there and think about it, it's going to make sense in terms of the personal growth work you've already been doing. It'll be in alignment. For example, maybe you always wanted to be more honest, right? You just really wanted to be that person, but you really struggle because you struggle with avoidance. Avoiding that outcome, avoiding conflict, avoiding people hating you. So maybe you haven't always spoken the truth when you should have. Maybe you didn't ask for what you needed. Maybe you didn't say how you really felt. Maybe you didn't set the boundaries you need to set. But all this means is that you have some very doable work, hard work, but doable work to get there. You can become more honest, no? You can work like hell at that till you get there. You can get it into a better place. The more you practice it, the more it will become a value. The more it becomes part of your value set, the more it becomes part of your identity or who you are. It becomes your new normal over time. The work is practicing it, screwing it up, practicing some more, feeling like crap about not doing it on Tuesday, getting back on the horse, recommitting. You're chiseling. You're chiseling a new form out of the stone. You will forgive the past by living out your new values or returning to the ones you had before you lost who you were. This can be a continuum of loss. I mean, we can kind of slip a little bit and check ourselves and get back on the horse, or we could be in a long-term relationship and not even recognize who we are today, and anywhere in between. It's a process. It's a bought and paid for one. So work through it. Your life will change dramatically as you do this. You will change how you operate. You will possibly change your priorities. You'll know how to prioritize better. You'll change how you see yourself, how you see the world. Your confidence will grow. Where's the downside, right? Well, you might have to change some relationships or how you operate in the relationships. You're going to have to set boundaries, more than likely. Values without boundaries are a wish list, right? They don't really show up in our life until we stand up for them. You may have to change where you work or who you work with or for, where you hang out. A lot of things might have to change, but eventually as you create more and more alignment in your life, you're going to feel so much better, and you will find folks who you can hang out with and work for and work with. Your insides will really start matching your outsides more and more. You know, you're not going to have to avoid, you're not going to have to hide, because you're going to like yourself so much more. So what I watch people do is they put themselves out there in the world. They actually start putting their gifts out there, their talents. They show up, they speak up more because they feel more solid in who they are. Now, of course, part of this process is being tested. You know, not all of this is going to be easy. You know, some of it's going to be really hard, but it'll be a worth it hard. You know, the saying is if you're living out one of your top 3 values on any given day in order, you're doing okay. It may not be easy, but you can sleep at night. Because once you hit the pillow, you can say, well, at least I did or didn't do, fill in the blank. At least I honored what mattered most to me in the moment. You know, I think a part of being a grown-up is being faced with competing important values and the very difficult task at times of having to choose the best one you can. Guys, if you work and have little ones, you know what I'm talking about. Kids only get sick on the day where you have that big thing going on at work. Of course. And you have to make choices. And sometimes we don't choose perfectly. And that's okay. We do the best we can. Okay, so a little mini exercise before we go. I want you to think about 3 of the values that resonated with you today. And I want you to take a moment and put the words I am in front of them and say them out loud if you can. If not, at least say them in your heart. Like, I am love. I am honesty. I am discipline. I am joy. I am truth. How does it feel to put the word I am in front of those? So today we talked about taking a list of values and deciding what your top 10 would be and why. We talked about how as we grow, we often change. We honor new values. We dust off some old ones, maybe. Then oftentimes we find some really cool ones we want to grow into. We want to make part of our life. Like if we were afraid of stepping out there, but all of a sudden adventure is on your list, don't freak out. It's okay. It's meant to be there. Maybe it was a part of you that was stuffed away, tucked away, put on a shelf, pushed down, never recognized, never realized. It's okay. Make sure you're a subscriber and get the new worksheet so that you can get started on this ASAP, okay? Know that this is a journey that you will solidify as you go. You can't hurry values work. You just let it kind of work on you. You just kind of focus on it. Next week, we're going to continue the values discussion by talking about the fun part, really living out these wonderful values you have pared down and identified. Wow. So if you're already a subscriber and signed up for the Tribe News, you'll get these emailed to you automatically today. So you can download the worksheet and have at it. If not, just go to ownitpowercast.com, sign up for the newsletter every Tuesday. You'll get the newsletter with any bonus downloads. You can listen to the podcast there. You can read the blog. You can get all the cool Tribe news. And you can get into past newsletters for any bonus downloads for the other podcast episodes if you're just joining us. Okay, thanks for being here with me today. Some more deep work. Really good, worth it work around values. So remember, pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you could begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now so you can really own it later.